Learning games as intricate as these can be quite a challenge. Providing players with proper tutorials and learning tools is critical, otherwise they might just quit out of frustration with the complexity of the game. The tutorials in both games, however, are quite bare bones. They are short and lack in-depth explanations. If you're already familiar with other CRPGs or at least Dungeons & Dragons, you can likely navigate these games and understand the mechanics. But for newcomers to both CRPGs and D&D, grasping everything can be a formidable task. When I first played Solasta, I had very little knowledge of D&D, which led to me spending several hours grappling with the mechanics due to the lack of thorough explanations. The game failed to elaborate on fundamental combat mechanics like attack rolls and armor class. Concepts such as DC and its definition were left unexplained. This was my experience, even with a certain level of D&D knowledge and a considerable RPG background. One can only imagine the confusion for players entirely new to this. Next, let's look at the non-combat difficulty. Solasta in this aspect lacks meaningful challenges. The campaign features very few puzzles, and these tend to be quite elementary. Dialogues pose a minimal challenge. A single character equipped with persuasion skills can easily navigate through most conversations. Even if you fail a dialogue check, it often has a negligible impact on the story. In essence, outside of combat, the game lacks any substantial challenge, offering a somewhat mindless experience. Contrast this with Baldur's Gate 3. The game offers a plethora of non-combat content that hinges on your own attentiveness and your character's skill checks. The game presents numerous pivotal dialogues where failing a check can significantly alter the course of the whole story, and I mean to alter as if change instead of just failing the whole quest chain. There are quite a few puzzles, and they are a lot more intricate and even can lead to fatal consequences. Properly exploring locations and looting is also vital for the gaming experience. Moving on to combat difficulty. Baldur's Gate 3 provides a clear and well-structured approach. It offers 3 distinct difficulty levels. Explorer for those focused on story enjoyment rather than combat hurdles. Balanced for a standard experience with appropriately challenging battles. And Tactician for those seeking a genuine test of their skills. These are the only 3 presets, but you can change between them anytime. The difficulty adjustments go beyond mindless stat boosting. The Tactician difficulty introduces changes in enemy behavior and reactions, often leading to substantial variations in encounters, involving additions like extra traps, improved enemy weaponry, additional skills for them to use, and more. One thing I want to mention is that the game becomes notably easier with time, even on the highest difficulty, especially if you have some prior experience with CRPGs and D&D. The early game can be a bit challenging, but as soon as you hit level 5, when spellcasting classes gain level 3 spells and martial classes get an extra attack, it becomes considerably easier. Of course, the difficulty depends largely on your playstyle. In my case, as I meticulously explored every location and completed all available quests, my party quickly became powerful and amassed plenty of loot. Playing on Tactician difficulty, I could count on one hand the number of truly challenging fights I encountered, and the times when I needed to focus on tactical gameplay. What makes things even easier is that the huge locations and abundant content ensure that if you encounter a particularly challenging situation, you can always opt to retreat and pursue an alternative, easier quest in the meantime. Nevertheless, the game was never a complete cakewalk. Combat remained engaging and never felt tedious or mindless. but it could have been so much more if it was a bit more challenging. Solasta takes a notably distinct and more streamlined approach to difficulty. In most cases, you don't have a range of choices regarding where to go or which quest to undertake, as you're often locked into a single quest line. This led me to detect a lack of balance in terms of difficulty. Initially, the game posed rather challenging. The party took a lot of damage and died quite a bit. This stemmed partly from the inherent weakness of low-level characters, and partly due to the game's bare-bones tutorial that left me uneducated. As I gradually grasped the mechanics and earned a few level-ups, the game became easier. There were still challenging battles and occasional deaths, so it was exactly the experience you would expect of the standard difficulty setting. And then, out of nowhere, there was a huge spike in difficulty, mostly due to the inclusion of random encounters. You see, it's in the name, they are random, thus unpredictable. I might have just been unlucky, facing off against an air elemental when the party was only at level 4. It is a formidable, high-level enemy, and fleeing or refusing the encounter just wasn't an option. It wiped us out 2 times before we managed to somehow beat it on the 3rd attempt. And it was not an isolated incident, there were more wipes like that. I even suspect that these encounters might potentially lead to a softlock, where you find yourself in an unwinnable situation, which can be very frustrating. This leads to an issue. You can stumble upon these tough encounters along the road, especially if you get ambushed and surprised. It could take an hour or more to figure out how to overcome these tough enemies. Yet, once you finally reach your destination, the contrast is stark. After facing off against an air elemental just moments ago, mere skeletons and ghouls seem like child's play. Another issue with the difficulty lies in its scaling and consistency. As I mentioned, the game started off quite challenging, then it gradually became easier, striking a balance of difficulty. The problem is that this trend continued, resulting in the game becoming progressively easier as my party grew stronger. Thankfully, Solasta offers a robust and versatile difficulty setting that can be adjusted at any point during your campaign. With 5 presets and the ability to create custom difficulty, it's highly accommodating. Whether you want enemies with a bit more HP, improved hit chances, or smarter foes, it's all under your control. Even better, you can also modify some core game rules that might not sit well with you. As I've previously mentioned, strictly adhering to D&D rules doesn't always translate smoothly, and this feature offers you the chance to tweak some of those rules to your liking. Whether you want to simplify the encumbrance system or enable all characters to use scrolls regardless of class, it hands you the reins to shape the game's mechanics. More games should have things like this. One feature that stood out for me was the ability to disable the requirement for somatic spell components. In the default rules, casting some spells requires your character to have a free hand. While this isn't much of an issue in tabletop D&D, where you can simply say, "This turn I'll sheath my mace and cast the spell," it becomes a cumbersome process in a video game. You need to open your inventory, unequip your weapon, cast the spell, and then re-equip the weapon on the following turn. Quite a hassle. I rarely bothered with this on my paladin, effectively sidelining the whole spellcasting aspect of the class. Baldur's Gate 3 forgoes this rule, and it's a change for the better. It's a relief to have the option to disable it in Solasta as well. One mechanic that plays a pivotal role in the balance of D&D based games is resting. There is only so much you can do before you'll need to long rest. With each battle, your party strength diminishes as resources dwindle. In the realm of tabletop D&D, it's the Dungeon Master's discretion to determine when players can rest. However, translating this mechanic to video games possesses an interesting challenge. Both of the games under discussion approach this concept in somewhat similar yet distinct ways. In Solasta, the long rest process involves meeting two conditions: finding a campfire within the game world and having at least 4 food rations in your party's possession. The food ration system itself is fairly basic. These items are generously scattered throughout the game, making it easy to maintain the required amount for resting. Moreover, if you have a character capable of casting spells like Goodberry or Create Food, the need for rations becomes virtually obsolete, as these spells provide exactly enough. The second requirement, the campfire, is more interesting. Each long rest spot has been hand-placed by level designers, basically your DMs. This creates an element of unpredictability. At times, there are campfires after each battle, while in other instances, you might fight through 5 encounters without any resting opportunities. This variation can pose a significant challenge, especially when you find yourself in situations with depleted resources and no foreseeable rest spots. I remember an incident where we found ourselves in a bind due to an absence of resources for the upcoming battle and no campfires on the map. This forced us to backtrack to a previous location on the world map, rest there, and then return to the quest at hand. The issue with this mechanic in Solasta also lies in its susceptibility to cheese. Once you've located at least one campfire, there's nothing preventing you from returning to it after every single fight, especially given that rations can be infinite. Baldur's Gate 3 also employs 2 requirements for long rests. The first is straightforward. You need to be in a secure location. Most areas in the game world are considered safe, barring the exceptions like an evil hug layer and such. And the second requirement is that you just need to have enough food on you. Then, at nearly any point, you can initiate a long rest by clicking the corresponding button, transporting your party to the camp where you can replenish your strength at the cost of the food. Creating an infinite food supply is more challenging here. Unlike Solasta, where you have the Create Food spell, the alternative, Hero's Feast, is a level 6 spell that you acquire near the end of the game, and the Goodberry provides only a negligible amount of camp supplies. While this means you probably can't long rest after every single engagement, there is still an abundance of food scattered throughout the game world, making resting never a problem. Thank you for watching till the end. If you enjoyed this content, please consider liking and subscribing. This video was just a slice of my comprehensive comparison between Solasta and Baldur's Gate 3. If I've completed the full video, you can watch it here. If not, check out another slice right here.